Alright, so now we've started to build out the subheader for our stock info view. But what we want to be able to do ideally is we want to go from our dashboard page, which is at the root, and then we want to click on each one of these, and we want to be able to get sent to the correct page and then have the data reflected in this component, right? So we want to make it a little bit more dynamic. So what we need to do to make that happen is we need to go to our list and we need to add a link to each of these elements so that when we click them, we get sent to the correct URL. And then we need to pick up on that URL and extract some parameters. So in this lesson, we'll take a look at how we can do that. And we'll start by going to our editor and we'll head over to our stock list. All right, so in our stock list, we have all of these stock list items rendered out. And inside of each stock list item, we need to be able to click on them and be able to link to the correct location. So if we go to our stock list item, we need to add a link here. And since we're using React Router, we can grab a component from React Router called link. So let's go ahead and import that. So we'll import link from React Router DOM. And we'll go ahead and add that inside of the list item. And then we'll add a to property. And we're going to have it point to stocks. And then we want to add the ticker of this stock. So if you remember in our data sets, we have this ticker. And that's kind of a unique ID for the stock. And we want to be able to pass that through here. So our URL ends up being like this. And if we click on another stock, that's going to be, so if we grab this ticker, the URL will be this. So it's going to be dynamic based on which stock we click on. And if we go to app.js, we can see the relationship because here we are adding a route that leads to stocks, and then we have this special syntax right here with a colon ticker. And what that means is we are going to have an interchangeable parameter there, which we can then access inside of the component. So this is going to be, sometimes it's referred to as a wildcard, but that's going to be interchangeable. So we'll be able to grab the ticker parameter inside of our stock view component, and the ticker parameter will change based on the URL that we set up. So let's go ahead and get to work on that. So if we go back to our stock list item, we want to be able to do something like this where we say stocks and then we'll add the stock.ticker in here. So these are template literals and it allows me to put this value and concatenate it onto this string. So we'll end up with the string of stocks in this or whatever it might be. So let's go ahead and hit save on that, and we'll go to our dashboard, and now we have a problem because our link item is kind of taking everything that we did before and screwing it up. So we need to add a class name and say styles.link, and then we need to go ahead and make sure that we fix all of that. So let's go to stock list item or stock list, and then we'll add the link at the bottom, and we'll say display flex, we'll say text decoration none, we'll say color inherit, and we'll see where we are. Yeah, that takes care of all of that. Perfect. And now if we click on one of these, you see that we're being sent to the other view that we have, and in the search bar up here you can see that it changes based on the stock that we are clicking on. So it's using that stock's ticker in order to build up the URL. Alright, so that's the first part. Now we want to be able to make sure that the correct information is plugged into this component. And if we go back to our editor, inside of our stock view, here ideally what we want to do is we want to fetch the data from some kind of API. So we want to be able to say const get data, and then inside of here we make a fetch call to some API, and we pass in the path and we get the data. But we don't have an API right now. We just have our dummy data. So what we're going to be doing for now is we're going to pass in our array as the as props, and then we'll filter through it and we'll find the correct one. And then we're going to set it up so that we're still calling a function called get data, and then we just have to swap the function out when we actually have an API to talk to. So let's go ahead and say that we want to use effect, and then we also want to use useState, and let's say that we'll set up a stock and a set stock function, and we'll say useState, and that's going to be an empty object. And then we'll have our get data function, and we'll fill that out in a second, and we'll have our useEffect, which is going to trigger when this component is mounted, and that's going to just run once. So we'll add an empty dependency array, and then we'll go ahead and fill this out in a second. But first let's go to app, and we want to do the same thing like we did here, and we'll actually make sure we use that props here. So we're going to use the render function, or render prop rather, and then we'll make that a function, and we'll render the stock view, and we'll spread out the props. So that'll just what this does is it takes the properties that React Router gives us, because it when it renders one of our components, React Router has the ability to give that component some useful properties, and we'll see that in a second because we'll use one of them. But we have to make sure that we actually pass those through when we use the render function. Otherwise, we won't get access to those utilities. So let's go ahead and add the stocks here. So we'll pass the stocks array through to the stock view component and hit save on that. So we should be able to access our stocks inside of our stock view right now. So if we go ahead and destructure stocks and we log that out, let's go ahead and see what happens when we click on one of our stocks here. and yeah, we get our stock array logged out to the console. So that's good. Now let's go ahead and make sure that we get the correct stock based on the path of the URL that we're at. So if we go to our browser now, here we have the ticker of Aker. Now we want to access that ticker somehow and use that in our program. So let's go ahead and go to React Router docs. And we'll go ahead and find what we need to use. So these look promising. So use params is probably the one we need. Let's see if we can find an example. All right. So let's see here. We have a function topic and it's destructuring a topic ID from the hook use params. And if we see up here, then we see that we have a route path that has a wildcard or a parameter called topic ID. So this looks like something that we also can use in our program. So let's go ahead and grab that. And we'll go ahead and go back to our editor. And inside of our stock view, we want to say that we want to have the ticker. Because remember, our wildcard is called :ticker. So we need to make sure that we match up with that. So now we have to import that from React Router. So let's go ahead and just see if that's from React Router DOM. Yeah. So let's go ahead and import use params from React Router DOM. And then we'll go ahead and log out the ticker. And we'll go back to our browser. And you can see in our console now we have the ticker of Aker, which matches what we have up here. So if we now go back and we get another one, then you can see that this one matches what we're logging out here. So now we can access that in our component. And we'll use that to be able to get the data that we need. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. So if we had an API, we'd do something like fetch API stocks, and then we'll plug in the ticker here. So something like, whoops, stocks, ticker. And then we'd grab the data and put that into state. But since we don't have that right now, what we're going to be doing inside of get data is we're going to say that in stocks, we want to find the item. So let's see. So we're gonna say find, and then we're gonna say item. And then if the item ticker equals the ticker, then we want to say, then we want to get that item, and we'll log it out for now. And then we'll get data inside of here, and we'll also move that inside of here so we don't get any issues with the dependency array. So let's go ahead and add those. And now let's go ahead and see if, yeah, we can see it already in our console that we actually found the correct item. So if we go back here and we go into another one, you can see that we found the correct item again, because we're using the ticker just to search through our data array. All right, so perfect. Now what we want to do is we want to say set stock, and we're going to add that into state. And I want to say, actually that's a better name for it. So let's say stock. And we'll change that out as well. And now we should have our stock object ready to go. Yeah, it still works as expected. So let's go ahead and plug that into our stock info. And then inside of stock info, we'll go ahead and we'll accept that or destructure that from our props object. And then we're going to say stock.name. We're going to say stock.ticker. And we're going to say stock.bid and stock.ask and stock.sector, and then we're going to add stock.change down here, and we'll hit save. And now we should be able to have, whoops, so it's not stock.name. I made a slight mistake here. Well, it is. So let's go ahead and see. Cannot read property name of undefined. Alright, so I think the issue is that we have an empty object and then we have undefined. Okay. So let's go ahead and check this out. We'll console log out the stock. So that's an empty object and then it's undefined. So let's go ahead and just do this for now. And yeah, that should take care of it. So now we're not rendering the stock unless we have a stock. So let's go ahead and just make that a little bit prettier by adding in the conditionally render component. If true stock, then show this component. And let's go ahead and go and just check out our data set again. Right, so it looks like we need to add a change property to our data sets. Let's go ahead and do that. And we'll hit save on that. And now if we go back to our browser, we should have our information, excuse me, and we should be able to go ahead and check out the different stocks and still have the correct one show up in our information here. All right. So I think that's it for this lesson. And in the next one, we'll take a look at implementing the highlight section here. And that should be a lot of fun as well. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you there.